Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Facebook, we have a very exciting interview today. He says it's going to be boring. I don't believe him. I think it's going to be an awesome story. When I interviewed Leroy McCullough earlier, after the interview, Leroy enjoyed it, and I hope to have him back because we didn't even get through half his story. He just kept saying, you got to get Bill Boggs. You got to get Bill Boggs, everybody. And he's like, man, Bill's my Obi-Wan Kenobi is what he said. And he's like, you got to talk to Bill Boggs. And I was like, all right. So Leroy hooked me up with his number, and I reached out to Bill, and he got back to me right away and sent me some awesome pictures. You're going to love the old school South Carolina stuff. The awesome pyramids you were doing. The people who cheered back in the 70s and 80s, straight up, were crazy. They were absolutely crazy, the stuff they were doing. But I cannot wait to hear Bill's story. It's going to be awesome. But as every coach says, hey, let's do it one more time. And it's time to go full out.
Are you ready?
Full out chats. Do you know what time it is?
F-U-L-L-O-U-P. We got control, we got the right, we got the vision, you lose the sight. We will never stop. What? We got the drop, yeah.
What time is it? Full out. We're live in 5, 6, 7, 8.
And with the music, it means we are going full out. Real quick, a special thank you to cheeranddancemusic.com for the awesome music. Again, cheeranddancemusic.com for the intro music. Thank you. And let's bring him in, the man, the myth, the legend, Bill Boggs.
Hey, Bill. Steve, man, I need you around my house every day. That is fantastic, man. I feel a lot better now. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I mean, we're broadcasting live, and it'll be on YouTube and Facebook going forward. So obviously, if anybody misses it, because thankfully, things are opening up and people are starting to go back to work, which is great.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yes, absolutely. But I just want to thank you again. Like I said, Leroy absolutely was adamant that we.
I paid him for that.
Well,
I love Leroy.
I mean, as I was talking before, we got to meet. I was one of the very first coaches that got to learn about stunt. And
yeah, that's right.
And we'll get to that later because we had Lori Harris on here, and we talked about the recommendation status, which obviously you were a huge part of. You're one of the inventors, really, of stunt. So I can't wait to hear your opinion, and obviously your just the hard work that's gone into stunt. But I want to hear your story. It's a great one. It's as I say, you're old school. You're one of the originators. And actually,
you're giving away my age, Steve. Come on, come on.
I mean, you look great for 35, Bill.
I don't feel a day over 80. It's like buying that new car. It looks shiny on the outside, but don't look under the hood. You know what I mean?
I mean, you have the cheerleading knees and elbows and shoulders, I'm sure. So I mean,
yeah. I'm hurting everywhere.
But also, I one of my previous guests was Bill Patterson, and
great, love Bill.
Yeah, Bill's unbelievable, man. And we kind of talked about. I remember, the big news back in 05 or 06 when the merger happened.
Right.
Merging. And obviously, you were right in the middle of that also. So obviously, would love to hear kind of what happened there and stuff like that. But first, let's start from the beginning, as I ask everybody. Start from the beginning, where did you grow up? Family life. Any other sports you played? I mean, were you an athletic person? Was your family athletic? And then kind of like
a short story.
And then, like everybody else, how'd you get in cheerleading? I mean, because
sure, and I think my path probably followed a lot of people early on. I was born in the upstate of South Carolina, right outside of Greenville. That's where both my parents' families were from. And my dad was a military guy. He was, he retired from the military. So we moved around a good bit, but we stayed mostly in and around South Carolina growing up. And I ended up in high school right outside of Columbia. My dad was a drill instructor, of all things, out at Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina. and went to high school there. I'd always, been fairly athletic. Steve, I'm just as average of a guy as there's ever been. I probably played a lot of sports. I never was really that good at anything, but I did enjoy playing football in high school and ran track. So, and then I got to one of those crossroads in my life that probably changed everything. And that was, at the end of my junior year or so, when it was coming time to think about college. And my dad, being a military guy, again, for some reason, he thought that I would make, some good Army officer. So his goal for me was to go to West Point. And he actually, I don't know what strings he had to pull or whatever, but he actually got me accepted to go to West Point.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so here I am in my senior year of high school, and this West Point thing is staring me in the face, and that is not what I wanted to do. I felt like I'd already been through 18 years of the military with my dad, and it's like, guy, this is just not for me. So the University of South Carolina is where I'd always wanted to go. I grew up a Gamecock fan, and that's where my passion was. So, one day I got up the nerve, to tell my dad that, the military just was not for me. And he was very understanding. He didn't kill me, which I thought he probably would, but he didn't. And, so I was off to college. And, I thought, at that point, probably, my athletic days were over, from an organized standpoint, other than, I got involved in a fraternity, started playing intramurals, and really enjoyed that. Had a lot of fun doing that. And then, again, like a lot of people, a lot of guys like me, I was at a fraternity party one night, and one of my fraternity brothers was dating a girl that was on the junior varsity cheerleading team. So we just started talking, and she said, Bill, have you ever thought about trying out for cheerleading? And I was like, no, I've never thought about that. I can't do those things. I've watched them on the sidelines. They're doing flips and throwing people around. I was like, I can't do that. She said, yeah, sure you could. So, well, look, a lot of us are getting together. Tryouts are coming up in a few weeks, and we're getting together down at the PE Center. So, why don't you come down and join us? Let us teach you a few things. Of course, you know what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you?
Let's go hang out with the cheerleaders.
Oh yeah. Are you a freshman? So you're just a freshman?
No,
right?
I am. Okay, so I'm on the 5-year plan.
I did the same. Don't worry about it.
This is the third year of my 5-year plan.
Okay.
So I go down, and I'm telling, within 5 minutes, I just absolutely fell in love with it. Mm-hmm. And some very good people there that turned out to be really good friends of mine took me under their wing, coached me, taught me, how to do some of these things that I never had any idea that I could do. Mm-hmm. And I just developed an instant passion for it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is just the greatest thing. And then it was so funny because I tried out. And tryouts were open. Well, my entire fraternity shows up for cheerleading tryouts. I don't know if it was in support of me or to laugh at me, but they got they got a little bit of all that from me. But anyway, it worked out, and I made the team. Mm-hmm. So that was 1980, and so then it was. I never will forget, the spring football game, which was kind of it wasn't the spring football game. It was the meet the players type thing. Mm-hmm. When, we first went to the football field, and it was kind of the first time with a uniform on, and God, just felt weird. And I never will forget, when we got there, these little kids came up to me and wanted my autograph. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not a football player. And we're like, no, you're a cheerleader. We want you. So, just all this, this new perception thing opened up for me. And then it was, and of course, I love college football. Always love college football. Yep, that's
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
They don't allow those anymore, but that was one of the favorite was back then. But just that atmosphere. You look at that. That's under the lights in front of
Mhm.
80,000 people and on the sidelines. Just so much fun. That was the year that George Rogers won the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, okay.
University of South Carolina. So that was just tons of fun. And had a great time. And then, of course, went on and cheered the next year, my final year at USC. And then I thought I was done with it.
Mhm.
I never will forget, the last basketball game that I cheered at. How emotional it was. Just because of something that I loved so much that I was
Mhm.
never going to get a chance to do again. So then, I graduate and I move back to the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville, and went into the telecommunication business. My cousin, my older cousin, who had been in the telecommunication business for quite a while, we started a company together.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was then my path in life. I was going to be in telecommunications, hopefully a business owner.
When you were at South Carolina, what did you study? What was your major?
I was a marketing major.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you're using it. You're gonna have to market this new business, and
yeah. It's worked out great for me. So I get to Greenville and I start working in telecommunication. Well, a girl that had cheered with me at the University of South Carolina had finished, and she was going to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. And I didn't realize at the time, but the Citadel then was an all-male institution, and they got their female cheerleaders from either the College of Charleston or the medical school. Well, she calls me up and says, "Hey, look, I'm a cheerleader now for the Citadel, and we're coming to Greenville to play Furman University. It's
okay.
a small private school in upstate South Carolina, close to where I work. Of course, I'd never been there. I've never, been on campus." And she said, "Come to the game. And then after the game, let's all go out and have a good time." I'm like, "Wow, that's awesome. Great. I look forward to seeing you." So I go to the game, and it was, of course, I'm watching the cheerleaders, and it's totally different from what I was accustomed to at the University of South Carolina. Of course, we were well coached, and, we had a really, well-established program there. I felt Furman was not like that at all. They didn't have a coach, and it was more of a kind of a comedy show. You could tell they didn't really take it serious. So anyway, afterwards we go to this party, and a lot of the Furman cheerleaders are there. So I started talking to some of them, and some of them knew me because we went to the same UCA camp together. So this one guy says, "Well, hey, look, you're in Greenville now." I said, "Yeah, I work here now." And he said, "Well, look, give me your card." So, I gave him my card, and, this was Friday night or whatever. Monday morning, I'm in my office, and I get a call from a man named Dutch Bachman. And Dutch is the athletic director at Furman University.
Okay.
And he says, I'd never met Dutch. He said, introduced himself. He said, "Bill, I was wondering if we could schedule a time that she could come by my office." And I'm sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll be happy to. So I go by, and he says, "Bill, look," he said, "some of the cheerleaders have been in, just told me they met you and the program that you're from." And he said, "We need a cheerleading coach." He said, we don't have anybody that can work. He said, "But the other thing is I can't pay you anything." He said, he said, "I want to hire you, but I can't pay you." He said, but if you wanted, if it's something that you would be willing to do after hours, your other job, we can get you tickets to the games. We can, you can travel with the team. And I'm like, "Wow, are you serious?"
Yeah.
And so I did, and I said, "Well, okay, it'd be something fun to do a couple of days a week." Well, then it turned into 5 days a week. Then it turned into 7 days. You know how that worked.
Yes.
You know how that worked. Well, again, it was that same passion that came back, but now I was getting to help others experience that that I experienced at the University of South Carolina. So anyway, I ended up coaching there for 3 years. My third year there, this is a program that had never competed or anything like that. In my third year there, we submitted a videotape to UCA College Nationals. In Division I, we were the highest ranking video. We got a full paid bid to go to San Diego and compete at the UCA College Championship. And so we went. It was an incredible experience. We ended up finishing second, a close second, which again, you would have thought we had won the world championship. I mean, it was just, so then, and all of that was just falling in place for me. I was back home where I was from, and, I had this wonderful coaching thing and the business part of it was going well too. Well, then I get another phone call, and this phone call is from a man named Bob Markham. And Mr. Markham was the athletic director at the University of South Carolina that I knew. I knew him.
Yep.
Yeah, he was there, of course, when I was a cheerleader there. And he says, "Hey, Bill, this is Bob Markham." He said, "Look, I just wanted to reach out to you. Our cheerleading coach was a female at the time. She's getting married and moving away. So we need a new cheerleading coach. And I was wondering if you'd come to Columbia and talk to me to see if you'd be interested in that position." And I was like, wow. Okay, well, sure. So I go into Mr. Markham's office, and he says, kind of like Dutch, he says, we need a cheerleading coach. He said, and this is a full-time position.
Oh,
really? He said it doesn't pay very much. He said, the pay is $14,000 a year. He said, but you don't have to be in the office. He said, you can work your other job. If you want to start camps in the summer, we'll help you start summer camps, just like we do all of our other coaches. And I was like, wow, okay. So all this is going through my mind. And I said, well, okay, let me think about it. Let me see if I can make this work. So I go back, my cousin, we talk, and he said, yeah, well, you can, we could set you up to still work in the communication business. So anyway, I ended up doing that for the first year. I worked both jobs. But then after my first year, I started doing summer camps. And it was mostly designed for individuals, school-age kids, individuals, not really teams. I didn't, I was affiliated with UCA. I didn't want to, rock the boat or anything like that. So I started doing camps. Well, then all of a sudden my camps grew, and it started, spilling over into teams. And we started some camps in Myrtle Beach and, other places around the state. And really, over the course of 9 years, the 9 years that I coached at the University of South Carolina, it became the largest summer camp program of any of the coaches there on campus. And I was very proud of it. So then, lo and behold, I get another call one day.
People are calling you, Bill. Just
out of the blue, I'm minding my own business, and and I get another call, and this call is from Fritz Hager, and Fritz Hager was the senior vice president of marketing for NCA. Okay, and this is early football season, and he says, "Hey, Bill, you don't know me. I'm Fritz Hager." And I didn't know anything about NCA. I'd always been affiliated with UCA.
Okay, real quick, I was going to ask you about that. So did you ever staff UCA or just attended UCA camps and then UCA? But that was it. That was your connection with UCA.
Yeah, and because I was older, when I got involved in cheerleading, and I remember talking with Becky Reginelli then and Chris Shepard back then, about staffing for UCA, but I was almost too old. When I was getting ready to leave, they wanted somebody that was going to stay, around for long, which I understood that, it was no big deal. So, anyway, so I get this call from Fritz Hager, and he says, "Hey, look, David Cottrell, another vice president NCA, we're traveling around, and we're coming through Columbia. We'd like to stop by and just introduce ourselves. I said, well, sure, come on by. Well, David happened to be a graduate from the University of Arkansas.
Okay.
And the weekend they were coming is when South Carolina was playing the University of Arkansas. So I got them tickets to the game. I said, well, look, I said, I have 2 tickets. You guys come to the game. And they took me out to dinner. And then, they started talking about, we hear about your camps. And they started asking me about, well, do you sell anything at your camp? I said, well, yeah, we usually have a T-shirt that we'll sell and matching shorts or something like that. So anyway, they started talking to me about, this, maybe we could, develop this relationship for apparel to where, hey, look, NCA has this whole warehouse full of apparel that we sell at camps, and we could give it to you on consignment. You sell whatever, we give you commission, you keep no inventory, you send it back to us. I'm like,
perfect.
Hey, yeah, that sounds pretty good. So that's where I thought we were going with that. And so this goes on for a couple of months. They fly me to Dallas. We have a couple of meetings, and then they call me one day and said, "Okay, look, Bill, we have a proposal ready for you. We want to fly you back to Dallas. We're just going to get a conference room at the airport. Shouldn't take long, and we'll see what you think." I'm like, "Okay." So I go in this conference room. And I sit down, and another person that came into the picture was Randy Best. Randy Best was an investment banker that actually owned NCA and NDA at the time. So now he's involved. So it's Randy Best and Fritz Hager. We're sitting in a conference room, and they say, "Bill, we have a little different proposition that we'd like to present to you."
They don't tell you this.
No, I mean, I'm blind. I'm blind at this point. So they said, "Bill, what we would like to do is we would like to purchase your camp company, and we would like to hire you to be the vice president of our company and head up our college programs."
For NCA.
For NCA.
Wow.
Well, I sat there stunned for what seemed like an hour, but it was probably, 10 or 15 seconds. And the first thing out of my mouth was, "Do I have to move to Dallas?" Here I am. I'm engaged to be married. I'm building a house, and I just opened a cheer gym. All of this is in Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm like, if they want me to move to Dallas, it ain't happening. So as soon as I asked that, they said no. They said, "You can work from wherever you want to work. We'll give you all the support that you need." And I said, "Well, let me take this home and run it up the flagpole with my fiance and see what she thinks about it." And it's still, again, at this point, I didn't know a whole lot about NCA. The only thing that I knew was it was a different style to me from what I'd seen, with UCA. It was more, kind of performance oriented, it was just a little different style. And I had some people that cheered for me at the University of South Carolina that had been NCA instructors, and of course UCA instructors too. So I knew a little bit about it. So lo and behold, I took the job and found out that the NCA college programs at that time had pretty much hit rock bottom. I mean, it was at one time they'd been a large program, and a lot of the shift had been to UCA at the time, and so it was kind of a shot in the dark for me. It was kind of taking over a football team that they hadn't won a game in a long time, so there's only one way to go but up. And I thought, well, okay, I was young and didn't have a whole lot to lose, and so the next meeting that I had with Randy and Fritz, they said, "Well, Bill, what do what would be your vision for these college programs?" And I said, "Guys, from what I've seen," I said, "one, we have nothing to lose. Let's have some fun with it and see if it catches on." I said, "Here are the 3 things that we need to do." I said, "We need to move our championship. At the time, it was in Dallas in January. I said, we need to move it from January to April. We need to move it at the end of the season. I said, need to move it out of Dallas, and we need to take it somewhere fun.
Mhm.
Places where people are going to want to go, whether a cheer and dance competition breaks out or not.
Yep.
And 3, we need to put it on network television. And they all just kind of looked around the room and said,
This guy's crazy.
this guy's a nut. Is it too late to tear up this contract? And I said, guys, we just really don't have to. I've always felt like that I had a connection with coaches and things that they wanted, and the things that could help them, and things that could make their job better, more fun, more exciting for the kid. So anyway, so they said, okay, let's do it. And the very first thing we did, because remember I told you I was already doing high school camps in Myrtle Beach. So it was at a resort location in Myrtle Beach. It was right on the beach. There's a big grass field right out there by the beach. Had a convention center where we did, some indoor stuff. And I said, you know what? We're going to put a college camp there. Never been a college camp like that before. Mm-hmm. We're going to invite people to come to the beach, and hang out with us and have some fun. And of course, at that time I had a pretty good network of friends that coached at different places and administrators. I reached out to them, told them what I was doing. So in August of '95 was when we had our first camp at Myrtle Beach. That was my first. I came to work in January 1 of 1995. My first my first role as in my new position was to go to the NCAA and NDA College Championship in Dallas, which ended up being the last one in Dallas. And it was very small, extremely talented teams, amazing talent. There just weren't that many of them.
Yeah.
So we were losing money hand over fist. So that first year, that first summer, was one of the only college camps I've ever missed. Was the Myrtle Beach camp, my first year, and it happened to be our largest college camp because that was the week I got married.
Oh,
I was leaving on my honeymoon. My wife said, "There's no way we're changing our wedding plans just because you got this little, camp thing going on at Myrtle Beach." So anyway, Don Collins and Shannon Smith, some really good friends of mine, they actually ran that camp, and then in the meantime, we were looking for places for our championship. And the first place we went, the first place that I thought was going to be ideal was Fort Lauderdale. I'd just been there with the University of South Carolina to the CarQuest Bowl, saw the convention center. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And, Fort Lauderdale, you could fly into Miami, go to Fort Lauderdale. They didn't want us. Fort Lauderdale told us up front that if this was a college student related activity, they didn't want any parts of it. They were trying to remove themselves from the college spring break image. And they just didn't want it. And we tried to explain to them that, no, this is like a sporting event.
Yes,
we're going to put this on television. They thought we were talking right. They thought we were talking about MTV spring break. Yeah. Like, no, it's not like that. So anyway, they didn't want us. And a lot of the other places, something didn't work out about. And then we found Daytona Beach. And we went there, and it was the beautiful Adams Mark Hotel at the time. It's now the Hilton. Beautiful, the most beautiful hotel property there in Daytona Beach, in my opinion. And the oceanfront band shell was right outside on the beach, right behind the. And then right across the street was the Ocean Center, the arena. We're like, oh my gosh, this is it. And they said, we would love to have you. And we worked out our deal with them. And we thought, we don't know how this is going to go, but we're gonna give it a shot. And then we just started, promoting it. We really didn't have a whole lot of idea what would, this thing was going to be outside. We're like, well, okay, what if it starts raining? What's it going to take for us to, move everything over into the ocean? So all that crazy stuff. But I'm telling you, it turned out to be a beautiful weekend, and it was on NBC the first year.
Oh, really?
It was on NBC the first year. We switched to CBS after that. We had Sandy Grossman, who was a producer for the Super Bowl several times, won a number of Emmys. His son actually was an all-star cheerleader in South Florida. That's how we met Sandy and got him to be our producer. So anyway, it just all worked out like that. And then, when it happened, we were like, that was fun. I was like, oh my gosh, that was something. And everybody there just seemed to, and we built it as a 5-day, 4-night event with they arrive on Wednesday, they compete on Thursday, Friday. Saturday was a free day. Saturday's when you get to enjoy the beach, and then you go home on Sunday. And everybody loved, especially that free day, because they just got, everything was over. They're at the beach. This is like, their spring break that they had foregone, to practice.
Yeah, exactly. But as we know, that Saturday ends up being Stunt Fest.
Well, yes. And I tell you, it started that first year, and it started on its own.
I was going to ask you, did you see a big jump in numbers that first year going to Daytona? Was there a big jump in numbers?
From when it was in Dallas to when it was, it wasn't a huge jump, but it was a fairly significant jump in terms of, there's a, there are a lot more teams come to this, and so maybe it is the better time of year, maybe the location, whatever it is. And then kind of the rest is history, for Daytona. And I mean, it just, it took off, and it has become a really, really fun event for us and for me. And this past April, we would have celebrated our 25th event in Daytona. So that obviously didn't happen. It was disappointing for everybody, but we'll get a chance to do it again in 2021. So now that'll be our 25th anniversary there. The people at the city of Daytona Beach have been absolutely fabulous. The people at the Hilton Hotel, all of our hotel partners there, the Ocean Center, they just have done everything to help make our event successful and make it fun for our customers to go there. And it really has turned out well.
Before we move on, I just had a couple quick things. So you take the job with NCA, but you're still living in South Carolina, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so were you still also coaching, or did you give up coaching by then?
No, I had, and I tell you, the last 2 years that I was at the University of South Carolina, we had an administration change. We had a new athletic director that came in, and for some reason, he thought that I should be an athletic director. So he wanted to move me more into administration. He got me involved in the marketing side of our athletic department while still being over our cheer program, but not actually coaching it that final year that I was there. And I knew from the beginning when he said that, it's kind of like my dad wanting me to go to West Point. Yeah, that sounds good and everything. I just don't have any interest in it.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to do that. So yeah, I'm living in Columbia, and I left when I took the job. I finished up in South Carolina in December, started NCA in January. We still had our gym there, I think, for 6 or 7 years after that, and I worked out of the gym for all those years that we had it there, and then we decided to get out of that, and I've been working from home in Columbia ever since.
So you've never moved to Dallas?
Never moved to Dallas.
Really? I
People,
didn't know.
pe- people,
Wow.
people have always thought that I either lived in Dallas or Memphis, and I did. I spent about 14 months in Memphis, 2006, 2007, and my family was still in South Carolina, and we thought, and we were trying to move to Memphis, and of course, that was a bad time in the in the economy, 2007, 2008, all that, and then after I'd been there, for a year or so, working with Jeff and and all the other folks there. Jeff called me in one day and he said, Bill, my son was 6 years old, 6, 7 years old. He said, Bill, you're really not doing anything here that you couldn't be doing from home. So he said, look, if you want to go back and work from Columbia, which, I really appreciated that from Jeff. And, he's always been very good to me, very fair to me. And so was Bill Seeley and others. So, again, it's just one of those things that worked out for me. I don't know.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
I don't know.
So for the people joining here, we're here with Bill Boggs, Senior Vice President of Varsity. Before we move on here, we're going to transition down into NCAA. Let's go back to these South Carolina uniforms real quick, because I mean these are that's a fist pump. That is the classic male cheerleader. Like, that is the fist pump. Absolutely. I love pleated skirts for making a comeback. Honestly, I'm old school that way. I love the old school pleated skirts. Old school cocky right there. Bill, you're lifting some weights, Bill. Man.
I'd always enjoyed working out, but that was mostly practice, man. I mean, out there throwing girls around every day. But that's back when I had a lot more hair and a lot less body fat. I can tell you that.
Then, this picture right here is the essence of 80s cheerleading.
Oh yeah, that was.
Like, that is that's 3.5 high, almost 4 high on the hardwood, no front or back spot.
Yeah, what were we thinking? But again, and Steve, that's when I coached at Furman.
That's Furman.
Those were the Furman cheerleaders, and we did that pyramid. We called it the Towering Inferno at the University of South Carolina. So me, brilliant. I'm like, okay, let's do this at Furman, and thank goodness nobody ever fell off of that thing, because I'm telling you, I mean, it was to stand underneath it and look up at that thing. It was unbelievable. Yeah, but that's back when there were no rules, and that's why they came up with the rules, because of stuff like that.
Okay, so being at Purdue, I've got a ton of old pictures, and I see some of the stuff and I'm like, whoa! Like,
I know.
Let me ask, like, how do you even teach this safely? Like, how do you even teach? And then that tippy top girl, give her a scholarship for doing it.
I'm telling you what, and I don't know if we strapped a parachute on her the first couple of times or what, but she had nerves of steel. I mean, she really did. Now, the girl at South Carolina that did the top part actually fell off one time at a game.
Football or basketball? She
fell off. And she kind of lost her balance and sort of stepped off the side. Well, the one spotter was in the back. And she fell off of that and landed on her feet right as the guy caught her. And she walked away. She was fine. Didn't hurt.
Wow.
Unbelievable. She was tough as nails, too.
I tell people, like, first of all, women are way tougher than men. Way tougher.
No doubt.
Question. Like, not even a question.
Yeah. That's a crazy pyramid. Yeah, we don't do that anymore, by the way.
We cannot. I have a word on the show. We cannot do this. This is not legal. And but then old school, you would tension wall stuff like that down.
Oh gosh, you did 3 high. You did 3 high tension walls. Double back basket toss. NCAA. I mean, they were up on platforms, throwing double front flips off of it to one catcher.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course, we didn't know any better. Like, okay, yeah, throw her, I'll catch her. But
I love the old the mini tramps, all that stuff. I mean, just
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, that was a dog and pony show. When you went to college camp and saw the opening demo, you're like, oh my gosh. But it was impressive, and it still is. It still is, but just a little safer, I guess.
So you are now at NCA. You're in charge of the college camps and the college nationals. You've moved. You're having a good time with it. And the NCA brand is making a comeback, starting to grow. And I tell people, because it's been a while now. It's been almost 15 years since the merger. NCA UCA was a huge rivalry. I mean, it was
rivalry.
In my opinion, it definitely brought out the best in both companies. I mean, you had to get better. And then I remember I was in Illinois doing my final senior year internship, because just like you, Bill, I took the 5-year plan. Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong with that, Steve. Nothing wrong with that. You want to absorb, that gets you to absorb more. Yeah.
I just wasn't done learning.
There you go.
And my buddy Omar, because I actually staffed COA. So I actually was COA staffer.
Sure.
Steve Wedge and all those guys.
Yeah. Love Steve Wedge. Yep.
Steve Wedge, unbelievable man. Great guy.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
The staffing director guy, his name was Omar Minhas. And Omar calls me, like, "Did you hear the news?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "UCA and NCA merged." I'm like, bull crap. No freaking way. And Bill Patterson he told a really cool story about kind of like his experience on one of the first phone calls and everything. I mean, for you, kind of like at this time now, are you a VP at NCA? Are you?
Yeah, I was hired as a VP. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So kind of talk about kind of your memories of when that all happened and the merger under Varsity.
Well, I knew that there were talks going on. Jerry Delatuso was our president at the time, and became a good friend of mine. And we knew that there were talks, and there'd been one occasion before this that they thought there was going to be a merger, and it fell through. And I never will forget, he called me into his office and he said, "Bill, this merger is finally going to happen." And of course, the first thing I think is, oh crap. Okay, here I am, Billy Boggs, that was a traitor, on the UCA side. Now they own me, so now it's gonna be, it's gonna be payback. I'm like, okay, I've never applied for a job in my life. I don't have a resume. I guess I better get to work on it. And so it was exciting, but it was scary. We didn't know. Of course, all the rumors started flying. So, okay, well, they're going to combine the championships, and all this is all going to come into one, and everybody's like, well, God, that just would not make sense to do that, because they're two totally different offerings. The championships, the camps, the styles, all those. You combine those and make them one. All it's going to do is create an opportunity for somebody else to come in there, and and I think the powers that be, I think they understood that. I think they understood the value in both brands, and as it evolved, and I think everybody saw that they could very easily coexist, as separate brands. So, but that was a very anxious time, transition through all that, and it was just a lot of the unknown. But I think once we kind of got into it, and started working with our counterparts in Memphis, that it became better.
Mm-hmm. So you are now working for Varsity. Everybody's now a Varsity brand. It's been that way for a while now. Like I said, a lot of current cheerleaders don't know. They don't remember. Some of them weren't even freaking born probably when this stuff happened.
I know, it's scary.
But I would say, like, Bill Boggs is synonymous with the NCA brand. You think of NCA and you're one of the first names that pops up.
Wow. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. But also, what I want to talk about, if you don't mind, is, in my opinion, you're one of the founders, if not the founder, of what is now Stunt.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, this is where I got to meet you that one time out of Louisville. And as part of that first coaching group, kind of learn about this. And I remember being like, what is this? This is so awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually had Lori Harris lined up as a guest for a one-on-one. And then she's like, can we postpone it? And I would love to come on your live coaches show, because all I'm going to say is we have big news that you will want to talk about. I'm like, I'm in. Yes, what is it? And then USA Cheer made the announcement that the NCAA has recommended be emerging sports status, which is big time. I mean, that's huge.
It is. It's huge. It really is.
I mean, so please tell the story about the origin of Stunt and USA Cheer and kind of the goals. And now, it looks like the goal's almost completed for you guys.
Well, we still have a ways to go, and Louie and her group are doing a fantastic job. And I'll tell you how this started. Forever and ever and ever, people had said, why is cheerleading not a sport?
Mm-hmm.
Why is cheerleading not a sport? And I think they were asking the wrong question. And it's like, what they were really asking is, why are cheerleaders not treated as athletes,
mm-hmm.
which they should be? They train like athletes. It's an athletic activity now. I don't think anybody will deny that. But from a definition standpoint, and this had already been through the court system in terms of, can schools count this as a sport? So the problem is the format, because cheerleading, when you look at cheerleading, 95% of what they do has absolutely nothing to do with competition. A lot of cheer teams don't even compete. So, the part of the definition is the primary function of this activity has to be for athletic competition. So then we looked at, competitive cheer, all-star, that could, be that. And it was like, no, because again, the format, you have a team that goes out and performs for 2.5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and, against all these other teams, and, it still didn't fit the format. So we were kind of, we got to the point where we were, okay, how can we reshape this thing to create new opportunities for all of these people out there that are practicing and training in these skills that we see in cheerleading. So it was funny, our group of, is Bill Seeley, Jim Lord, Bill Ahern, myself, Terry Lukowski. We brought her in. She was our Title IX consultant, because this whole thing, revolved around, it has to meet the requirements for Title IX. And that is, big for colleges, universities, and high schools. So, and then of course Louie came along, and we had Brandy Cochran, Katrina Wireman, and some other feet, and we said, okay, what are we going to do? So we're bouncing around, how can we do this? How can we do this? And I tell you, and I still have the email that I sent to Bill Seeley. I was on the NCAA college circuit in 2010, and I was traveling from Las Vegas to Louisville, Kentucky, July 29th, and I got laid over in Dallas. So the whole time on the plane, I'm thinking, what can this thing look like? How could it still be exciting? And it's coming on, and I came up with this thing in my mind, and I was on the plane and I typed it up.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking through it and I typed it up, and the next day, the 30th of July, is I sent it to Bill Seeley. And I told him, I said, look, I had some time to kill last night, and, I came up with this thing. I know we've been working on some other stuff. It's kind of gymnastics oriented. I said, but I really think it needs to be something more like this. Mm-hmm. And I think people enjoy this. And it was the whole concept of the compulsory, two teams head to head, doing the same thing. And, whoever does it better wins the point, and then they can challenge each other, and it goes through the different skill elements. And our next conference call is Bill Seeley coming on and saying, this is it, so from drafting that original concept, then we just kind of started chipping away at it, still not knowing But then, we didn't know for real until we actually saw it.
Yep.
And we had our first scrimmage in December at Methodist College, between Methodist College and UNC Chapel Hill. And that's when we really got to see it for the first time. And we were like, y'all, this thing is going to be so cool. It is going to be so cool. And then, of course, Louisville, as you mentioned, that was our first tournament at the University of Louisville, which, as Bill Seeley said, we were painting the ship as we sail.
Yep.
And just kind of kept, tweaking it. But the concept stayed the same. And the fact that, that we still had incorporated music into it. We had this whole fourth quarter thing, this team performance. Like, okay, what's this thing going to look like? Well, at first, early on, to get teams to do this thing, the best way was, well, let them do the routine that they're already doing for competition. And, let that be their fourth quarter instead of them having to come up with something else. And again, that worked perfect. Teams were like, okay, well, cool. This will help us really zero in on technique and skill. And then, by the way, in the end, we get to practice our routine in front of people. So, and all that kind of worked. And then, we kept, the very first year, the NCAA gives you a set of requirements that you have to meet to even be considered, to even be reviewed. And the very first year we met all of those requirements. It's the first time that any sport has met the requirements in year one. We had over 20 teams. You have to have over 20 teams that are participating and, and all these other things. And we checked every box. Now they didn't approve us, and, but still, it took, 10 years later. But it is, and right now, we've had well over 100 colleges and universities participate in it. Schools are adopting it as a varsity sport. High school, it's exploding at the high school level. It's already a varsity sport at the high school level in California, Wake County, North Carolina, New York, Oklahoma. And now we're getting into the youth level.
I've seen some all-star programs and youth rec programs announce youth stunt teams.
Well, think about this. And, this is what we said. This is something that all-star gyms could do in the summer. They could create leagues in the summer to have this activity, for one, to, keep membership coming and to keep activity going in the gym. But, it's something that they can do locally, or regionally that, doesn't involve a lot of cost, a lot of travel. And again, it focuses on developing strong technique and precision, which is, as we were kind of getting away from that in competitive cheer and all-star cheer. It's like, everybody's trying to do the most difficult things. Okay, yeah, it looked nasty, but you did it. Well, this is not like that. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that now.
I was beyond excited when I heard about it, because not only if it does eventually become an emerging sport, usually when a sport becomes an emerging sport with time, as long as you keep growing like stunt has, like you usually will get the nod, and my director of compliance here at Purdue told me, like, yeah, this is awesome for you guys, anybody, for the athletes and the coaches. If it becomes emerging sport, then obviously, let alone, full-fledged sport, everybody becomes more valuable. It just helps you and your athletes out overall. And so,
well, the timing could have been a little better,
Yeah.
with the pandemic thing. And of course, the budget strains that's putting on institutions around the country, which is very unfortunate. And some schools are having to cut programs right now. There's still, the Title IX component of all this that exists out there that, to create equal opportunities for females. And, and that was one of the things that, one of our guiding principles is, this thing, we want it to be fun to watch and play, easy to understand, meet all the requirements. And, so it's done that.
We got about 10 minutes here, Bill. So if you don't mind, we can do a quick shout out to my sponsor, and then we'll have a couple more questions. So just a quick shout out to Cheer Chalk. Cheerchalk.us. It's a great product. I actually have a bottle right here. It's good for about 50 uses. So 50 uses of Cheer Chalk. Basically, if you have really sweaty hands or you get wet hands while you're stunting or just working out, whatever, it's a liquid-based chalk that you put on your hands. Doesn't wipe off or anything. It's a really cool product. And if you want to get an additional 10% off, go to cheerchalk.us. Put in the discount code FULLOUT10. You'll get an additional 10% off the $5 off special they already have. So once again, go to cheerchalk.us and put in the discount code FULLOUT10 to get an additional 10% off. So Bill, so now we're in this pandemic right now. And obviously other things, civil rights, tragedies happening here in our country. It just seems like 2020 just keeps kicking us down. We're trying to get up. Kind of just, going forward for the rest of this year, you had already mentioned it, and one of my very first interview was Lindsey Bracken, coach at Oklahoma State. Yeah,
I love Lindsey.
And she's great. And, she talked about the decision for NCAA college to cancel, and which obviously was the right decision. It had to be made, and going forward from there. So kind of just, how are you doing? How's everybody, what is the future plans going forward of just trying to overcome this and, come back stronger than ever?
Well, how many times do we hear the word fluid? Mm-hmm. Everything's just, everything's still moving. And to be honest, we just really do not know. Right now, we are planning full speed ahead. Our company is doing everything that we possibly can to help our customers, to help our communities, to help our schools, and in times like this, and all times, in the equal rights, the pandemic, there's so much going on out there, and as Bill Seeley and Adam Blumenfeld say all the time, we're in the business of uplifting people, and if there's ever a time that that our society and our schools need spirit, now's the time. So we're going to do everything that we can to help do that. And as far as us, we're planning like our college camps right now. We're still planning to run them. For those that can come and those that want to participate, hopefully that will be the case for some. We know it won't be for all of them like normal. Mm-hmm. As far as our championship, our championship doesn't take place until next April. We hope that things will be a lot more back to normal by then. And we know it was so disappointing for us, and especially all those seniors mm-hmm. out there that just didn't get that chance. Yep. And so we're looking forward to that. We're going to do our very best to make sure that we put together just a fantastic experience to those that get to join us this summer or in the fall or next spring. But you just don't know, and you just have to have faith that the people that are making these very difficult decisions are going to do the right thing, and it's going to work out for all of us. I have faith that it will. I have confidence in that, and our mission hasn't changed. I think it's just it's driven all of us harder to do a better job. And this is something that none of us expected. Mm-hmm. All of these things that are going on, it's like, gosh, what? Yeah. Just a few months ago, we were just clicking along and everything was fine. But it just goes to show you that life is not always like that. And, you need to have a plan B ready. And I think, what's happening now is a lot of good is going to come out of this, all the things that are going on. I believe that. And I think that we're all going to learn a lot from it. So we'll be better prepared for things in the future. And, we just, it's above our pay grade right now, Steve. We just, it's in somebody else's hands, and we'll just deal with whatever we're dealt.
Two more questions. First question. So you've coached a couple legends in our industry, Pat Wedge and Leroy McCullough. And you can be honest, how hard were they to coach?
That's a good question. Are they watching? Are they watching? Are they going to have access to it?
If they're not, they can watch later on YouTube. So,
I tell you what, of course, Pat is a legend. He was a legend when I met him. When he came to me and said that he wanted to transfer to the University of South Carolina, I didn't go after him. I didn't recruit him. He came to me, and I mean,
how do you say no?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's like, okay, we've kind of reached the pinnacle.
Yeah.
This guy could go anywhere that he wants to go, but he wants to come to the University of South Carolina, and I was very honored by that. And and Pat, everybody just instantly looked up to him, which can be difficult for a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat had taught for UCA for a long time. I mean, he was probably more knowledgeable, definitely more skilled, in all the technical things, the stunts and pyramids and all that. And it was a huge pleasure and a huge honor to coach Pat and to become good friends with him. And Leroy, I never will forget the first time I met Leroy McCullough. He walks in my, I had this little, office at the time. It was kind of like in a trailer sort of outside it was an expanded thing, and we were in cubicles. And I hear the door open beside me. I look up and I see this giant man, walking by my cubicle. I'm like, oh my gosh! I mean, this guy looks like he plays tight end for the Giants or something. And then he comes into my office, and he's just this teddy bear of a guy with this, huge smile. And, but I mean, he's massive, and I'm going, okay, that could, but Leroy, and of course, Leroy works with me now. He's been working with me for a long time. He worked with us at our gym when we opened our gym in South Carolina. He was our gym director, and Leroy is just like a brother to me. And he was as easy to coach as anybody's, always very respectful. But you know the story about Leroy, right? You know what happened to him?
Oh, when he fell on tumbling and broke his neck? Yeah. He told that story in his chat. Yeah. I didn't know that either. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know that.
Well, it's one of the scariest things that ever happened to me, and I was probably standing 10 feet from him. And Leroy's not a tumbler, I mean, he just never was. But, he wanted to try and be able to do it, and he just kind of took it on his own. But it scared me to death when that happened to him. And I'm, thankful that he didn't have any lasting injuries or anything from that. But, I've thoroughly enjoyed working with Leroy, all of these years. And like I said, he's been like a brother to me, and I'll always be grateful to him.
Last question, and this question I ask everybody I interview is, what's the one piece of advice that you've received that, whether it be coaching or just leadership or anything, what's one piece of advice that you've received that just always sticks out to you to this day?
Well, it came from another legendary person. His name was Art Baker. And Art Baker was working with me at the University of South Carolina those final 2 years when I was going through that transition. And then, of course, when Leroy got hurt and things like that, he was our director of the Gamecock Club and really did a lot for me. And Art Baker, he coached at East Carolina University. He had coached numerous places. He was a well-known coach. But, he was kind of a philosopher type, but just as easygoing. The worst word you ever heard out of his mouth was frap. He said that frapping something or whatever. That was the worst thing he ever said. He never cursed or anything like that. I mean, all his times of coaching. And I never will forget, because he knew that I was struggling with, what am I going to do with all this? That's all this is happening to me right now. And, and he's looked at me, he said, Bill, he said, follow your heart and never look back. He said, Focus on the future, make a decision, don't ever second guess yourself, and never look back. And he was right. So I never will forget it.
And absolutely, 100%. I mean, if you're always doing something from your heart,
yeah,
I mean, all you can do.
Yep, that's it.
Bill Boggs, I knew this would be a great story. I knew it.
Well, people are going to be wanting their money back from this one, Steve. They're going to be saying, hey, Pat Wedge, Leroy McCullough, now you give us this? I don't know. And Bill Patterson. Whoever wants to follow Bill Patterson? I mean, that guy, we've said all along we should put him on the road and we could sell tickets for him to get up and speak to people.
I ran into him at the hospitality, coach's hospitality at High School Nationals for UCA.
Yeah.
And, he was in there, like filling up the pretzels and stuff. And
oh, yeah.
Like, hey, Bill, aren't you like a VP? I'm the VP of concessions or something like that. It was so funny.
he doesn't care. He'll get in there. He'll bring his trumpet in there. He'll start playing in his baton and all those kind of things. He is a character, man. I love him.
He's got Indiana everywhere. He's got the red and white down.
Oh yeah.
He's a diehard Hoosier. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Bill, I just want to thank you again for your time today, sir. It was a pleasure. I wish
pleasure's all mine, Steve. Thank you.
Stay healthy, and I'll end the podcast here, and then we can actually chat a little bit afterwards. So, thank you, Bill, and then you can just stay backstage here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Bill. Bill Boggs, Senior Vice President, Varsity Brands, just a great man. So cool to hear those stories about the foundation of Stunt, why it came about, his time at South Carolina. And just basically people like giving him a phone call. The guy has never had to write up a resume. That's unbelievable, but good things happen to good people. So thank you again to Bill Boggs for being here today. Everybody, thank you very much for tuning. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back on Tuesday. And as always, I will post tomorrow on our Instagram who next week's guests are. So again, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great weekend.